in fantasy football seasons. He's the top 30 receivers I'm ranking going into the 2023 season. Number one, Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings. So Justin Jefferson, what a season it was for him last year, no doubt about it. And the only downfall with him was late, obviously in the playoffs for fantasy owners. He came up short, but besides that, he had a monster season with Justin Jefferson. In my opinion, I think he's number one pick overall over Christian McCaffrey this season going into the year. And like I said, last season, 1,800 yards and 8 touchdowns. I think this year the yards will go down a little bit, but the touchdowns could go up. And Justin Jefferson, best route runner in the league. Breakaway speed. He can make all the plays. He can make the crazy catches. And easily, he's number one for me. Number two, Ja'Marr Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Ja'Marr Chase only in his third season in the NFL, and he's already taken the league by storm. And him and Joe Burrow, obviously college teammates, and they brought it to the NFL now, and they're hitting on all cylinders. Is a Cincinnati Bengal team where they're going to be a good team for many years to come, and Ja'Marr Chase obviously a huge part of that. Last season he missed a lot of ball games and still put up huge numbers, over 1,000 yards with Ja'Marr Chase. And once again this year, they're going to have the same offense over there, a lot of good weapons. I know teams are still going to double team Ja'Marr Chase in Cincinnati, but still he's going to get his. And like I said, he's the second best receiver in the league right now, and I got him number two this year because I got him over Tyreek Hill because of the receptions, and I think he could find the end zone more as well. Number three, Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins. So last season, a lot of people thought Hill going from Patrick Mahomes to Tua, it was just going to be a huge downgrade, but obviously that wasn't what happened. Tyreek Hill had a career season last year as the number one man over there in Miami with over 1,700 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. So this season his goal is to go for 2,000 yards receiving. I don't know if he can do it, but with his speed, obviously, and just the way he gets off the line of scrimmage here is Tyreek Hill. I couldn't count him out, but obviously 2,000 yards in a 17-game season is very tough. And Hill right now, he's going anywhere from 5th to 9th overall. I've seen him a lot go in some fantasy leagues, and he's falling down. If he's falling to 9th, that's a steal in my opinion. But right now, overall, I got him 5th in fantasy leagues and 3rd at the receiving position. But right now, if you took him over Ja'Marr Chase, I don't think it's a crazy argument. And I think these guys will have similar numbers, but I just like Ja'Marr Chase a little bit better this year. Number 4, Cooper Kupp of the Los Angeles Rams. And Cooper Kupp right now nursing a hamstring injury. And that's definitely a little concerning to me, obviously, is the hamstring injury here for Cooper Kupp. Because last season, we know he's banged up towards the end of the year. He missed about 8-10 ball games, I believe, Kupp missed. And he was on another tear last year. And this season, coming into training camp now with the hamstring injury aggravated early in training camp. This Ram offensive line isn't all that great. And we don't know how healthy Matthew Stafford's going to be. So a lot of factors, even though we know Cooper Kupp is a generational wide receiver, winning the Triple Crown a few seasons ago. He could run every route. He could get off the line of scrimmage. And he just goes out there and he makes every play as Cooper Kupp. But right now, obviously coming off the major injury and this Ram team with a lot of question marks, this is why I had him 4. If this Ram team was like it was a couple seasons ago, he's easily the number 1 or 2 receiver coming into the year. Here is Kupp. Number 5, Stephon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills. So Stephon Diggs, him and Josh Allen had a little bit of a fallout in the offseason, but now they're both saying it's all good. And Stephon Diggs, obviously, he's had career years now with Josh Allen over the last few seasons. After in Minnesota, he was a wide receiver on the brink, and then once he got traded to Buffalo, he broke out with Stephon Diggs. So he's a solid 10th, 11th pick overall. He's going in most fantasy drafts in the back end of the first round, same as last season. And you pretty much could pencil Stephon Diggs each and every year, anywhere from 1,300 to 1,500 receiving yards on the year. And obviously he's going to get 8 to 10 touchdowns usually as Stephon Diggs. And to play with a quarterback with a monster arm and one of the better quarterbacks already in the league with Josh Allen, Diggs, he's going to be a top first, second round pick still for many years to come, I believe. Even if they had the little hiccup last season, I think they're going to be back on track here. And this Bill team, they hear all the noise that a lot of people picking the Jets to win the division and go to the Super Bowl. So right now, I think that's going to motivate him as well, Diggs, and this offense. And once again, I think Diggs is in for a big year. Number 6, Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions. So St. Brown, the last couple years, he's taken the league by storm pretty much out of nowhere. He is St. Brown. In the last season, over 100 catches. And right now, I like him a little bit better than Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, and CeeDee Lamb. But it's who you prefer at this point. at the 6th spot, it's definitely an open discussion. That Brown's a possession receiver. He's one of the best route runners in the league, obviously. He's not really much of a deep ball guy, but a lot underneath, obviously, with Jared Goff. A lot of breaking tackles, and he's got that breakaway game breaker speed as Brown. And also not a lot of weapons on this offense where he's going to get peppered with targets. So that's why I got him at 6, because some of these other options, they got better guys around them in the offense where the ball gets a little bit more spread out. But Brown, he can run all the routes. He can make the plays. He's a young receiver as well, obviously. And like I said, he's the number one man over there in Detroit. And him and Jared Goff have great rapport. So I got him at 6. Number 7, Davante Adams of the Vegas Raiders. So I've seen a lot of people on the websites and stuff. For Adams, he's the 10th, 11th wide receiver overall. Behind guys like A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Waddle, and even Garrett Wilson I've seen as well in some of these drafts. But right now, Davante Adams, I know his quarterback turn is there for fantasy owners, but last season, even with Jarrett Stidham, over the last 3 ball games of the year, he had a good year. Last season, 1,516 receiving yards, 14 touchdowns on 100 grabs. So right now, I know Jimmy Garoppolo is not a deep ball thrower. I know he's more of a game manager than anything, but if he has to throw it, he could get the ball to his wide receivers. But I think Davante Adams, it doesn't matter who his quarterback is, obviously, because last season we saw with Rodgers, once Adams was gone and traded to the Raiders, Rodgers, he wasn't the same type of quarterback as he was in years past. So Davante Adams, he's an elite receiver. I know he's a little bit older than some of these guys I mentioned, but still, if I get him in the 2nd round here, he's my 2nd receiver, or even my number 1, obviously, depending what you go in the 1st round of your fantasy draft. That's a slam dunk. And like I said, Adams, he's done it year in and year out. And some of these other younger wide receivers have only done it for a few years. So going off a track record and just the talent alone here with Adams, I got him at number 7. Number 8, A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles. I took A.J. Brown over CeeDee Lamb in this situation because I just like Jalen Hurts getting him cleaner balls to A.J. Brown and being a more consistent quarterback than Dak Prescott. So A.J. Brown last year in his first season with this Philly team, they went to the Super Bowl and he had a monster year with Brown. I know he started off slow, but he had some huge ball games dropping 40-plus points in them. And he had just about 1,500 yards with 11 touchdowns. So A.J. Brown got that big contract in the trade last season going from the Titans to Philly, and rightfully so. And if you could lock him up in the 2nd round, that's a good spot. And right now he's going about 15th, 17th range overall, A.J. Brown. And I like his output once again this season. This Philly offense is very dangerous with Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert, and Jalen Hurts at quarterback. And once again this year, I think he has a big year. And I got him at 8. Number 9, CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. So CeeDee Lamb, the last couple seasons now, he's starting to get going. And last season, we know Dak Prescott for the first half of the season almost with the thumb injury, missing 5-6 ball games. And Lamb still had almost 1,400 yards with 9 touchdowns on the year. So right now, if that could be healthy, I think the numbers bump up a little bit. And now they got more help over there in Dallas. To have a Brandon Cooks on the other side lined up with you, teams just can't focus on CeeDee Lamb and double team him the majority of the time, because there's going to be times he's going to have one-on-one coverage, and there's even going to be times where it's a broken play and he can leak by the defense. So CeeDee Lamb, I know other websites and stuff had it a little bit higher, but the problem with me is the consistency of Dak Prescott week in and week out getting him the football, because CeeDee Lamb could run all the routes. He could go up there and get those jump balls as well, and he's got a knack for the end zone. But right now, I got him in 9. Number 10, Jalen Waddle of the Miami Dolphins. So what a tandem last season for this Dolphin team. And the only thing that stopped Jalen Waddle was to his injury. Last season with Thompson and Bridgewater in there at times. He had a couple dud ball games, but still a monster season with over 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns. So I know some people got Garrett Wilson above Waddle, but I just like Waddle because I've seen more out of him, obviously. And we'll see what Aaron Rodgers could do with this New York Jet team. So Jalen Waddle, one of the fastest players in all the NFL. He could run all the routes, and him and Tua just had a great rapport on that quick 10-inch slant where it was out of Tua's hands in 2-3 seconds. A quick hitting plays, and that's what this Mike McDaniel offense is built on over there in Miami. And to be opposite of Tyreek Hill, he's going to get a lot of one-on-one coverage once again, is Jalen Waddle. He's a big-time playmaker, and I like him at 10. Number 11, Garrett Wilson of the New York Jets. And no doubt about it, Garrett Wilson had a monster rookie season and was offensive player for the rookies last year with 1,100 yards and 4 touchdowns. And yes, he goes from Zach Wilson Mike White and Joe Flacco to obviously Aaron Rodgers, which is still a huge upgrade, even though I think Rodgers' best years are behind him at 39 years old. But that's another conversation for another day. But Garrett Wilson, he could be a playmaker, no doubt about it. This year, can he take the next step in his second season and get to 1,200 yards with almost 100 catches and 7 to 10 touchdown range? It's definitely a possibility. But like I said, now this Jet team, they got a target on them. Teams are going to come in and say, let's see what this Jet team's got, and just play them even harder than you do on a regular Sunday, I believe. So Garrett Wilson, no doubt, last season, what a rookie year it was for him. But right now, I still rather have those options I mentioned. But he's still a good playmaker. He's going to make plays, and he's a great number 2 wide receiver for your fantasy team, I believe. Number 12, Calvin Ridley of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Ridley, we know, was suspended all last season with the gambling issue, and now he got traded to Jacksonville at the deadline last season. And that's a great pickup for the Jacksonville Jaguars, because Ridley, we know he's been a number 1 wide receiver in this league. When Julio Jones was traded to the Tennessee Titans, Ridley stepped in that year, and he's the 4th wide receiver in fantasy football in points per game that year. So Calvin Ridley, he's got speed, he's still young, and that gets a fresh start here with a dynamic offense with a lot of young guys in it. And Trevor Lawrence, who's obviously an up-and-coming quarterback who had a great year last season in his second year. Him and Christian Kirk's a good duo with Zay Jones, Evan Ingram at tight end, Etienne and Tank Bigsby in the backfield. So right here, they got a good offense. Calvin Ridley, he's definitely a true number 1 in my opinion. Even with a year off, it's not like he didn't want to play. He just was suspended. So right now, he wants to prove people wrong. He wants to get things back on track. He wants to get a big contract. And I think this season here, Ridley's got top 12 potential easily. And I got him at 12. Number 13, T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals. So right now, I might be ranking Ridley a little bit higher than most people. But I just believe he could be a number 1 guy off the bat for that Jacksonville Jaguar team. And T. Higgins, he had another solid year last season in Cincinnati. And now where coverage is going to be rolling to Jamar Chase, obviously. Higgins, he took big advantage last season of those one-on-one coverages. I know some ball games he got banged up a lot in was Higgins, but he hung on there and he almost had 1,100 yards with 7 touchdowns on the season. So right now, he's going about late second, mid-third round here is T. Higgins. And to get him as a number 2 wide receiver, or even as a number 1, I'd be comfortable, to be honest, going into fantasy drafts. Wide receiver is a deeper position, I believe, this season than running back, and more big play type of players as well. So right now, Higgins, once again, I believe will have a good season over there in Cincinnati. And I got him at 13, 14, Chris Olave of the New Orleans Saints. So Olave, I've seen him, he's up there in the rankings, top 10 in some rankings as well at the wide receiver position. But I'm going to pump the brakes just a little bit here for Chris Olave. So right now, I got him at number 14 this season. Is Olave. Last season, I know we had a great rookie year, over 70 catches, over 1,000 yards with 4 touchdowns. Now he's going to get, obviously, a better quarterback in there instead of Taysom Hill, who played a majority of the season. Looking to run the football, obviously, 50+% of the time with Derek Carr in New Orleans. In New Orleans, they could be trailing in a lot of ball games as well, where there's going to be garbage time. But right now, I just don't like Olave in the second round. If he could go mid-third, late-third round, I think that's a great spot for him. And like I said, sites have him right up there over Jalen Waddle. I've seen him and Garrett Wilson about the same range, over Ridley, over Higgins. But right now, in the middle of the pack at the wide receiver position, and number 14 out of the top 30, I think that's a perfect spot for Olave. Most likely going to have a better year than last year. He's playing with a better quarterback in Derek Carr than a Taysom Hill or even a Jameis Winston, who barely played last year. So right now, Chris Olave, things are looking up for him. But like I said, I'd just rather have those other receivers I mentioned. Number 15, Keenan Allen of the Los Angeles Chargers. I know I might be overrating Allen a little bit here in the rankings, but obviously he has a big track record. And some of these other guys, I think, were a little bit fluky as well over the last few seasons. I know Keenan Allen last season, he missed 10 ball games, and that definitely did me in a few fantasy leagues. But I wouldn't be worried. I would go back to the well once again if Allen's over there. Late third, fourth round to get him on my team, because I know what I'm going to get for Allen. He can catch the football, 100 receptions a season. He'll get his 1,000, 1,200 yards on the year, and he'll get anywhere from 8 to 10 touchdowns. And right now, this offense is going to be even more high-powered. Adding Kellen Moore, who wants to push the ball down the field as the offensive coordinator over there for this Charger team. And also adding Quentin Johnson, another big-time wide receiver who's a first-round pick for the Los Angeles Chargers. So right now this offense is loaded. Keenan Allen, the only problem with him throughout his career has been health, where a few seasons, including last year, obviously, he missed a chunk of time. But if he's in there, he's got top 10 potential each and every season. But I got him at 15, 16. Devonta Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles. So he's on a dynamic offense as well. If I believe Devonta Smith, he had 3 or 4 huge ball games last season. And that's where he got most of his fantasy points and his yards and touchdowns. Last year, 95 grabs, almost 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns for Devonta Smith. But like I said, I'd rather have some of these other options I mentioned ahead of him. We're going to put in, obviously, more consistent ball games week in and week out. Because Devonta Smith, I know he's a blow-up player, where some weeks he's going to get 40 fantasy points. And then some weeks he's going to get 5 to 10 fantasy points. So right now, just the inconsistency is why I dropped him down on my list a little bit here at number 16. But if you go in with him as your number 2 wide receiver, I think that's very solid this year to have Devonta Smith on your roster. Like, say you go running back, receiver in the 3rd round, that's the spot where I would want to get Smith. Mid-3rd round would be perfect. So right now, like I said, A.J. Brown's the number 1 over there. And just Smith, a little inconsistent game in and game out, but still you can't go wrong with him. And just I got him at 16, 17, DK Metcalf of the Seattle Seahawks. So DK Metcalf, we know he's a freak in nature. We know he can run all the routes. But we also know that sometimes he's going to have some ball games where he's inconsistent as well. So last season he got off to a roaring start, was Metcalf. But he fizzled out a little bit at the end of the year. But he still had over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. But I'm waiting for that monster year out of Metcalf, where he's got 1,200, 1,300 yards with double-digit touchdowns, because I know he's capable of that. I know Geno Smith had a good year last season, even though I definitely could see him take a back step. But DK Metcalf, he wants to get that big contract sooner or later, and I think this is the season where it all comes together possibly. But right now, like I said, wide receivers stack position. I got to see more consistency out of Metcalf. But to be a number 2 wide receiver on your roster is perfect, I believe. So I got him at 17, 18, Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers. So Christian Watson, he took the league by storm last season in the second half. And he helped this Packer team get to the last game of the season and have a chance to get in and make the playoffs. But obviously they lost to the Lions. But Christian Watson in his rookie year, 41 catches, 611 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. I know early in the season last year he was injured. I remember he dropped an 80-yard walk-in touchdown right in his hands, where Rodgers dropped it right in and he would easily took it to the house, but it didn't happen. But anyway, him and Jordan Love, so far the reports coming out of training camp have a good rapport. And Christian Watson, we've seen it already. He could turn a 10-yard slant route into an 80-yard touchdown. That's just the breakaway speed he has. That's the athleticism, and easily he's the number 1 wide receiver over there in Green Bay. Romeo Doubs had better opportunities than him early in the season last year. We know they had Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb. Both those guys are gone and went to the New York Jets. And right now, Christian Watson in a team that they could be trailing a lot this year with the young quarterback of Jordan Love, and he could get a lot of garbage time, and he's got game-breaking playmaker ability. He's a perfect 2 number wide receiver for fantasy owners. And I got him in 18, 19, Deebo Samuel of the San Francisco 49ers. So the reason why Deebo Samuel, I have him down on my list here than other people, is he's gonna lose his running attempts, obviously, with Christian McCaffrey there now. And Eli Mitchell is a solid backup and change of pace back here and there for some series. And also him and Brock Purdy didn't have the greatest of rapport. And his injury history has definitely been a big concern, way bigger than Keenan Allen's concerns over the last few seasons. But Deebo Samuel is coming into the great shape of his life here, coming into training camp, coming out of San Francisco. But like I said, a lot of weapons on the offense. Ayuk, Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, who's going to be the focal point, and the offense built around them. So I just think Deebo takes a little bit of a back step. But I still believe he's a solid number 2 wide receiver for your fantasy team. But the thing that worries me is the injuries, and he's going to lose running attempts as well with McCaffrey there. Number 20, DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears. So DJ Moore last season, it was a tough year for him with Baker Mayfield. But the season went on with the carousel of quarterback with Sam Darnold and PJ Walker over there in Carolina. He finished up with a decent year when it was all said and done as DJ Moore. Not obviously the big numbers you expected, but he had 888 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. So now, obviously, he goes to a Chicago Bear team where Justin Fields isn't the greatest thrower of the football, obviously, but it's an offense where I think DJ Moore could fit in as a guy who's going to get open on broken plays, where Fields obviously could scramble around, get his wide receivers open, and I think a lot of screens as well, and they're going to try to force feed DJ Moore. He's easily the number one receiver over there. Claypool they got, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet at the tight end position, and then you got Herbert, Deonta Foreman, Johnson at the running back. But right now, DJ Moore as a low-end number 2 wide receiver, I think is pretty solid here. Last season, he had some big games with P.J. Walker, like I mentioned. Him and Baker just weren't on the same page. And I think Justin Fields, he could get the ball to DJ Moore. And like I said, with the broken plays and stuff, that definitely could play a big factor. So I got him in 2021. Amari Cooper of the Cleveland Browns. So Cooper, no doubt about it, last season, he was very surprising coming out of nowhere after he had a terrible year in Dallas. But maybe that was more Dak Prescott than anything, because last season, with majority of the year with Jacoby Brissett, he had a good year. He's Cooper, almost 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns on the year. So now Deshaun Watson, he's ready to go. No more off the field issues with him. And this Brown team, they got a lot of weapons as well. Cooper, they traded for Elijah Moore from the Jets. Donovan Peoples-Jones, he had a good season last season. David Njoku, Nick Chubb. So this is a dynamic offense. And Cooper, the only problem I've had with him, he didn't play well with Watson last season. And on the road, he disappears. Even going back to his Raider days, just some road games, he puts in stinkers as Cooper. So right now, those inconsistencies definitely scare me off a little bit. Why move them down the board? But he's still a good possession receiver. He still has the knack for the end zone. But right now, some of those other players, like I mentioned, I'd rather have than him. But I still got him in 21, number 22, DeAndre Hopkins of the Tennessee Titans. So Hopkins here, not the greatest of landing spots, obviously, for his fantasy football outlook. With Ryan Tannehill, he struggled to get the ball to number 1 wide receivers that have come in there, besides obviously A.J. Brown, but then they traded him away to the Eagles last season. So Hopkins last year, we know he was suspended early part of the year, and he still finished the year though with 64 grabs, 717 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. He wanted it out of Arizona. And that goes to Tennessee, where I think they got a pretty solid offense in terms on paper. Henry, Tannehill, Hopkins, Traylon Burks, even though he's banged up. Okonkwo at tight end. So right now, some good weapons he's got around him is DeAndre Hopkins. But like I said, the inconsistencies of Tannehill with wide receivers throughout his career definitely is an issue. But I still think Hopkins, as a low-end 2 receiver for your fantasy team with flex option, is still solid enough for 22, 23. Mike Williams of Los Angeles Chargers. So Mike Williams, we know he's a big play receiver. And we also know there's games he's not going to show up as well as Mike Williams. But the main thing is health for this Charger team. And if all these guys are healthy, Mike Williams could have a 1,000-yard season with anywhere from 5 to 7 touchdowns. Last year, 900 yards about he had on the year with 4 touchdowns. So right now, if Keenan Allen's healthy, it opens the field up more for Mike Williams. We know he's one of the best deep threats in all pro football here, and as a number 2 wide receiver flex option as well, I think Williams is solid, and I got him at 23, 24. Terry McLaurin of the Washington Commanders. It doesn't matter who his quarterback is. Terry McLaurin, year in and year out, he's a 1,000-yard receiver and a number 2 wide receiver for fantasy football. Last season, just about 1,200 yards for him with 5 touchdowns. I know Sam Howell now is the newest guy to be the starting quarterback over there, named for this Washington Commander team. So right now, McLaurin, like I said, perfect number 2 wide receiver for fantasy owners. He definitely always drops down in that board, anywhere from the 5th to the 6th round usually. We've been seeing Terry McLaurin go ADP-wise, and in a few mock drafts I've been doing here before the season. So right now, like I said, this Commander team is going to be trailing early and often in a lot of ball games, and there's going to be a lot of garbage time and catch-up games where they're going to have to throw 40 or 50 times most likely. And Terry McLaurin, we know he's a good possession receiver, and he knows how to get open and make plays. So I got him at 24, 25. Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. So London, a lot of people have him up there on their list, but he's another guy with a quarterback issue in Desmond Ridder. And we know this Falcon team's going to run the football a whole lot, especially now drafting Bijan Robinson very early in the NFL draft in the 1st round last season. So right now, London last year got off to the hot start. I know Marcus Mariota was the quarterback there, but then he really fizzled out the last 5-6 weeks of the year, finishing the year with 866 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns in his rookie season. So right now, hopefully he takes the next step. But quarterback play is obviously an issue for me. And like I said, this offensive line is the best running blocking offensive line in the league here for this Falcon team. So right now, I think they're going to run a whole lot. They still got Kyle Pitts over there as well. Matt Collins, he was a decent signing. I think he could be a good deep ball threat. So they got a lot of weapons. But like I said, I can't really trust Ridder to get one in to the next level this season. And also, it's going to be a run-first team for the most part. 26, Jerry Jeudy of the Denver Broncos. So Jerry Jeudy, his issues have been health over the last few seasons. And last year, we saw some monster ball games at Jeudy where he had 67 grabs, 972 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns. If he could stay healthy and this offense could get on the right track now with Sean Payton as the head coach, it could be sky the limit for Jerry Jeudy. And I know he's a big-time prospect coming out a few seasons ago, but he just hasn't lived up to it, in my opinion, yet, is Jerry Jeudy. But as a number low-end 2 receiver flex or 3 receiver and 3 receiver leagues, I definitely would take that with Jerry Jeudy, obviously. But like I said, he's had injuries a lot. He's had a lot of inconsistencies as well, game in and game out, where there's some games you're not going to even get 10 fantasy points from Jeudy. But if Russell Wilson could play better and Peyton could get this offense on the right track here, he definitely could move up the rankings as the season goes on. But right now, I'm going to play it safe, and I got him at 26, 27, Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks. So Tyler Lockett, we know pretty much each and every season, he's not going to do it game in and game out, but at the end of the year, when you look at the stats, Lockett, he finishes with 1,000 yards and anywhere from 8 to 10 touchdowns, and that's exactly what he did last year. 84 catches, 1,033 receiving yards, and 9 touchdowns. So Tyler Lockett, he's been in this system forever over there in Seattle. We know he's a good possession receiver. We know he could get down the field and burn the secondary for a deep touchdown. And him and Geno Smith last season had good rapport. So right now, Lockett as a low-end 2 receiver flex option, going anywhere from the 4th to the 7th round range. End of the 4th to the 7th, I've been seeing him going. Usually, though, 5 or 7 for the most part is Lockett's ADP. And he's been drafted. He could split defenses, obviously. This offense, they got good weapons. Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet in the backfield. DK Metcalf, obviously. Then you got Jackson Smith and the Barber they drafted as well. So this offense is going to be fun. And like I said, Lockett, to get him 6th, 7th round, I think is a safe bet, is a number 2 flex option. And I got him at 27, 28, Brandon Ayuk of the San Francisco 49ers. So Brandon Ayuk, he's starting to get things going over the last couple seasons. And him and Brock Purdy had a great rapport last year. So Ayuk, big year, over 1,000 yards as the number 2 receiver there last season. And this year, I think he's going to build on it, is Brandon Ayuk. So right now, he's going anywhere end of the 5th, 7th round range as well for fantasy owners. And I think he could be a perfect flex option, to be honest, for fantasy owners in PPR leagues. Because there's some ball games where he's not going to do it week in and week out. And then there's some blow-up games where he's going to score 20-plus fantasy points. But like I said, he was a favorite of Brock Purdy. And obviously, Brock Purdy's going to be the starting quarterback. Already announced here for this 49er team. Number 29, Deontay Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Johnson, he definitely had a down season last year. He just couldn't get on the same page for the majority of the season, but he still ended up on the year with 86 catches. So I think if they could get on the same page, it could be a 100-catch season here for Deontay Johnson. Now, I know George Pickens, a lot of people think he's in for the huge breakout season, and also with Pat Freiermuth taking even a next step into an elite level at the tight end position. And obviously Najee Harris, he's going to get a big workload, and Jaylen Warren in the backfield. But right now, Deontay Johnson is a flex option or number 3 receiver in 3 receiver leagues. I think solid. And like I said, he's a PPR type of player. Even if he gets, let's say, 7 catches for 40 yards, that's 11 points. And that's not horrible, obviously, in your 3rd spot or the flex option. So right, we're going to play majority of the snaps here is Deontay Johnson. I know they brought in Allen Robinson, but we'll see what he really has left in the tank. And him and Pickett hopefully built on their rapport from last season and get things going, because we know a few years ago with Ben Roethlisberger, Johnson, he was a big-time receiver for fantasy owners, and the 30th and final receiver I'm ranking heading into the season's Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Chris Godwin last season, he didn't have that great of a year in terms of week in and week out for fantasy owners, but he still had over 100 catches with 1,023 receiving yards, but only 3 touchdowns And now, in my opinion, he goes at a downgrade from the quarterback position. To go from Tom Brady, even though Father Time did catch up to him, was Tom Brady, he's still way better, I believe, than a Baker Mayfield or Trubisky, whoever's going to start over there for this Tampa Bay Buc team. So Chris Godwin, we know, is a possession receiver. We know a lot of dump-offs and screens they've designed for him over the last few seasons. But we'll see how this offense is going to run with Baker Mayfield. But I don't have confidence that Baker could get the ball consistently to Mike Evans, who's not even in the top 30, and Chris Godwin here, because we saw him with good receivers in Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, and those guys had trouble putting up consistent points. So right now with that, even though I know he's a 100-catch receiver pretty much year in and year out as Godwin, I got him at 30, so that's the top 30 wide receivers I'm ranking heading into the 2023 season.